Welcome to the September 10th, 2020 Economic Development Council meeting. And we're just going to, this meeting is televised, and we're just going to jump right into the agenda. First order of business is accept the meeting minutes of August 13th. If everyone had a chance to review it, if anyone has any comments, questions, or corrections, speak now or forever hold your peace. None? Dan, was that did you move that?
I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, if you could state your last name and yes, that would be great. I'll start off with Stephanie.
Danielson, aye.
Dottie?
Yeah.
Fulgenetti, yes.
Tim?
McCall, yes.
Dan?
Smith, yes.
John?
Holbrook, yes.
Bruce?
Boyer, yes.
Okay, that passes. So those minutes are approved. And the next item on the agenda is the PACE presentation discussion. We had the people over from PACE last month. It was a lengthy discussion. It was a great discussion. And we've had a month to kind of sit on it, to think of some questions, offer feedback. Dan, and you brought them in, you led them. If you could, maybe share, bring us a little bit up to date on just a brief overview, so people at home know what we're actually talking about.
Yeah, sure. So the program was deployed this year. It's been a few years in the works, but Quasi Public State Agency Mass Development's been leading the charge in the deployment in collaboration with the Department of Energy Resources, which we work closely with as a town with, being a green community, solar deployment and whatnot. So this is from my opinion, I thought the meeting went really well. I thought Wendy did a great job presenting. I thought Tim asked a ton of great questions that, helped further the discussion. And oftentimes I think those questions that Tim had asked are important to the town, but we'd see similar questions taking place if, for instance, Stonehill College was considering using a PACE program to, make energy and infrastructure upgrades in any of their buildings, or a building owner in the industrial park, for instance. So I thought it went well. It's a tool in the tool belt for the business community to use as they're considering making upgrades to their buildings. I think the $250,000 threshold will limit the amount of participants that can use this program within the town. But I also do believe in the same breath that when the tools available to the right industry or business partner that's in the town that may need to utilize it or have the option to utilize it, the ability to have it there, whether it's next year, 5 years from now, brings a tremendous amount of value. Bruce, I'll call you out. So the program it allows you to take some energy and infrastructure investments off your balance sheet, put in the form of a betterment, and amortize it over 20 years. So when you're hitting like a debt service capacity, any limitations for a private college, a private business owner, it allows you some financial flexibility to amortize that project and not have it impact your capital and operational budget for the business itself. So I think it's a great program. I strongly endorse it, and I'm hoping that we can have the discussion and move it along for the select board's consideration. But I thought the meeting was great. I think the tool itself is a powerful one, but yet again, it's going to be one that's going to be utilized pretty rarely within the town, at least in my opinion, based upon the prerequisites around overall project capacity and the energy savings requirements that come along with it. So that's my 2 cents, but
John and Bruce, you guys were not here in the last meeting. Do you have any questions on that brief summary that Dan just gave on the program? Any questions, comments?
No, I don't think I do.
I briefly read through it, and I'm going to go through the paperwork some more, and I actually sent it to our energy manager for her to review it as well. So,
okay, yeah, feedback from that person would be outstanding.
Yeah.
Jody, you were also not here. Have you any comments or questions to Dan or the group that was here?
Sure. I actually had a different meeting this week with Jay Patekos from Mass Development, and we talked about this a little bit.
Nice.
So, and we had actually done this presentation a year ago, and Michael Blanchard was going to be collecting some information on the questions then. I don't know if that was brought up at your last meeting, but some of the questions that we had at that time were, how many communities are taking advantage of the PACE program now? You know, what is the need? Like you said, Dan, you know, it's a $250,000 threshold. So I guess establishing the need and what is the cost and what does it take for the town to be able to put this on the bills? Is there a cost or a way to manage that and to collect the fees? If the fees aren't collected through a betterment, then what happens? Whose responsibility is it? Some of those technical things.
Yeah, and my recollection from the last meeting, Dottie, is that staff was going to speak with Mass Development and possibly some other municipal stakeholders that have adopted it. I'll tell you that there's about 20 plus communities that have adopted PACE. New Bedford, Yarmouth, Barnstable, New Bedford, Franklin are some of the towns that come to mind, cities and towns that come to mind. Randolph maybe as well. And again, from my perspective, it's, you know, the utilization is an important component, and it may not be a program that's utilized and a good fit for every single business, but when in economic times like this, and to have a developer or a property owner that may otherwise not make improvements or consider, you know, moving on an asset or not investing in the buildings that we all want to see thrive, to have this available, I think that's the value. So I can't speak to what the costs are from the town's perspective. I think we've got to get, you know, Stephanie and Connor and the assessor in that team connected with other stakeholders to really peel that back. But I think the utilization is an important question, but it's you know, it's all relative, right? It could be important to Stonehill for projects that they're looking at for renovations. I know there's, with COVID and everything else, so, you know, the more tools that we have available to the business community and nonprofit community, I think the better for everybody. As long as it's not.
I think if we're going to do it, I think we want to be effective with it. What I was kind of thinking of is if we could do a survey for, say, the industrial park, right? So that would accomplish two things. It would give the information to them, letting them know about this program, and see if we could stimulate conversation with business owners to find out more about the program, get a feel for if there is an interest, and do an actual survey on what their business needs are, not just around PACE, but around energy or around, we could put anything we wanted in the survey. I think the industrial park would be a great place to start, but that's not the only place, right? If we could collectively come up with businesses that we think would meet this criteria, I think we would have probably a more successful approach to do it like that, rather than if they build it, we will come, right? So how are we going to let businesses know that this is available to them?
Yeah, I think that's something that the town can market, and, you know, we can post and share within the business community. And we're talking about the partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and other stakeholders to kind of share that message. And, you know, I believe it's important. I think it's something that, honestly, I think it's a no-brainer, but to survey and ask the community as opposed to say, hey, we've implemented this program, we're ready to deploy it, it's available when you need or want to use it, is another approach. So
yeah, Dottie, I think to follow up on what you were saying about reaching out to the business community on this, you know, we're wrapping up our goals and objectives, the various departments in town, to review with Connor over the next couple of weeks. And one of the things I added on economic development, it's a continuation of some of what we've talked about in the past, but is having, conducting listening sessions within the various business districts. And one of my top ones, because of other conversations we're having, was to start with the industrial park. So I think that would be a good approach. And I think the idea is, you know, here we could go in and we could say, here are some things that the town's thinking about. Here are some opportunities. Here are some tools. we'd like some feedback from you folks, and and then really sit and listen to what they have to say. In my notes, I also, I look at, I think there are a couple of things. I think in addition to having it in the toolkit, Dan, as a tool that business owners could use, and it might make properties more saleable, is that it also is a way that the town can take credit for looking at ways to reduce the town's overall greenhouse gas emissions.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I definitely thought those two perspectives were beneficial. I do think that we need to talk with Connor and probably Wendy. Not even probably. I think we need to just find out what staffing burden this might present.
Yeah. But I think it'd be great if you had that as an action coming out of this call, that you'll connect with some other comparable communities that are, I'll send you the list or I'll get a hold of it. But, Randolph, Sarmus of the world.
Wendy, I think, or Jay said they'd send it to us, but I thought from the meeting, if I'm recalling correctly, they said, what I recall hearing was that there weren't a lot that had signed up for the program, but were interested in maybe in the process. But I could have heard that wrong. It was
there are definitely at least 20 municipalities here in the Commonwealth that have signed up for it. I'll look it up and read some off.
I have a couple comments. I think the best course of action before a survey is conducted is to talk to Connor and Wendy to see if they can handle it. Otherwise, the survey would be completely unnecessary. So if they do say that they can handle it, that they have the bandwidth to work on the back end, and then a survey goes out, who does the survey? And what is the timeline of the survey? Trying to get an idea as to if this is to go into, if we are to adopt this, when would that be? Okay, it's September. So I think between now and our next meeting, find out if from Connor his input on this and if the bandwidth is there. And then between October and November, put together a survey and those who will actually conduct the survey to occur between October and November. And so that hopefully by December, we can make a decision on this. I don't think that's unreasonable at all to have this brought in August and be able to make a intelligent decision by December. I don't want this to stretch out too long. I don't think anybody will benefit from that. So does anybody want to contribute to that?
I would say that I think that we could ask Old Colony Planning Council if they would help with the survey. We would have to give them, the names and the email contacts, but they could help craft and facilitate a survey, I would imagine. So
would we want to do that in conjunction with a listening session? I just feel that actually reaching out, and as much as we can be in person or even do a Zoom meeting like this where you can see people, that the surveys are very helpful. I think you can get even more insight, and people, when they have an opportunity to hear what someone else says, it prompts additional discussion.
So there are 24 municipalities that
will have a broader success with that. Say that again, Dan?
I'm sorry, I went to it. So there are 24 communities that have adopted PACE. I'll distribute the list. I don't see a chat.
Well, and I think, Dan, you mentioned earlier that this is a relatively new program. So that's a growing number.
It'll continue to grow, and there are that'll be adopting it, and it's nice to be ahead of the pack. We were ahead of the pack with Green Communities. We're ahead of the pack with Community Compact, or maybe not an early adopter, but we were up there. And this is another program that's more geared towards the business community. I understand there's a cost that we've got to determine in a potential burden for the town, but this is more for the businesses to consider, and it's a tool. So I do agree with you, Mark. It'd be nice to move on this thing and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to see whether or not with Connor and the broader team, if it makes sense. But yeah, I'm
not trying to rush it at all, but I do think it's only fair and reasonable that we not take a year to make this decision.
I would say it's more than a tool. It's really an economic development driver. So I think,
Yeah.
we should be thoughtful in the way that we approach it and roll it out, but certainly not wait months to
Yeah.
make a decision on it.
Anybody
Okay.
else have any questions or comments?
I haven't heard anything about how this is actually going to work with, again, where the town becomes effectively a pass-through between the bank and the business owner. So, I mean, it sounds, I don't know how many people would take advantage of this, but it's all the way down to 1 to 4 family units could take advantage of this. Could be not a lot of work, could be a ton of work. As a software, we're going to have to buy this, or is Mass Development going to provide it? Or, and what happens if the town makes mistakes, not getting the payments over to the bank in a timely manner? Who's responsible? So just for that purpose, I don't think if we're going to vote on it today, I haven't heard any answers on that yet. So I can't support it myself, and that's all I have on it. Thanks.
Tim, I think your questions need to be posed to PACE and in conjunction and with Connor at the same time, so they can relay what the answers to your questions to Connor. So Connor and Stephanie, you as well, of course, and Dottie, to determine if the town has the bandwidth to do this. But yeah, again, like last month, there's very specific questions that are very that I didn't think of.
All right.
So it sounds like in general, people think this is an economic development driver. It could be a useful program for the town to offer. We still need to get some answers. Tim, would you mind putting in an email, you just jotting down the questions that you just raised? Because I think they're really good ones, and that would, I'm sure they'd come out
Sure.
during the discussion with.
Send it to you or send it to the whole group?
Well, send it to the whole group. And then
All right.
what I can do, working with Mark, we can set up a meeting. And I think, Dottie, because you are the select board representative and the chair of the select board, that meeting. So Mark, you, me, Dottie, Wendy, and Connor, and I can get that set up.
That's good.
Awesome.
And then in the meantime, Dan, if you have that list, I don't know if you've sent it already, but if you could send that to me, then I can reach out to some of those communities and start asking them what their experience has been.
I'll send it now.
And one of the other questions I can send you is what if the business defaults on that betterment? Then what happens if there was a lien, or if there were like.
We made it very clear that the town is the superior in and that the town's not responsible for that.
Well, it sounds like the betterment would be drafted by the town, then assigned to whoever the financial institution would be, or assigned to Mass Development. I don't know how they're going to do it. I've never seen this done before. It's relatively new, so I assume that's what they'll do. And then, but all the payments will go through the town, and then funneled to Mass Development, who then funnels it to the lender. But
Because
traditionally, if somebody didn't pay their sewer betterment, then the town would put the lien on. So I assume now the assignee on behalf of the betterment would have put a lien on the property. I don't know how it would work, and so it's relatively new. So those kind of things.
it would be in a subordinate role to the town. So say they owed taxes, the town's taxes would be in a.
Well, they would be in superior lead positions, what we call a super lien. You always have to clear up the tax takings and things of that nature before you can transfer property. So I would assume the betterment would have to be cleared up before they sell it. But then on this list here, says there's no acceleration clause. So I don't really, might have to talk to some lawyers on that. I don't know how that's going to work, but so there's some questions there on who's responsible. I assume it must be the bank. The bank's the one giving out the money.
Right.
The town's not, it's not like taxes. The town's assessing you the taxes and you have to pay it directly to the town. This is going to a second and third party after that. So.
And our attorneys would look at anything before we were, before we moved ahead. And if we have that list of other communities, Jay Tallerman's office could look at it, and I'm sure there may be a community there that's one of their other clients, so they may be.
That's a good idea.
Also.
And maybe it makes sense at that meeting with Connor and Wendy to have Jay or Wendy at that meeting.
Yeah.
Sure. Doesn't hurt. The more the merrier.
Yep.
Although it's new in Massachusetts, just so everybody knows, PACE is probably in 20 plus states, and there's a couple $1 billion worth of, activity in that, the construction activity. So it's not a new program by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and I think either you or they brought that up at the presentation.
That was good. I thought it was a good dialogue. Tim nailed it with a ton of great questions, and I think the follow-up and just getting everybody together will be the next logical step to move or not move on it.
It was
Good to me.
incredibly informative for sure. Yeah. And there were great questions in this meeting. It's bringing about more great questions and a timeline and a course of events for it to either occur or not occur in the next few months. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, unless anybody has any last comments. Okay, so the next item is Growth District Ambassador discussion. By way of explanation, what that is in previous meetings, we discussed our 3 sewer infrastructure districts, Queesit, Five Corners, and Main Street. And we talked about the economic charge of backfilling those areas with business, so to speak. So we have sewer in all those districts, working sewer, and now we need to backfill it with business. That is the objective of putting that sewer infrastructure in to support the town and our need for more revenue. So when we talked about that, we talked about this board being broken up into, maybe teams of 2, and each, those teams of 2 would tackle a district and explore it, understand the vacancies, who owns what might work in there, talk to some owners. And in talking with Stephanie, Stephanie had brought up before we can attempt that, we need to establish a charge. We need to establish what the message that we're bringing, the questions we're asking. It has to be more formal. And Stephanie, if you want to, maybe talk a little bit about our conversation and how to move forward with that.
Yeah, I thought it would be really helpful if we had a discussion about what do we actually want the ambassadors to do? What are the goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And what's the charge? And then talk about the messaging and the tools that the ambassadors would need to actually execute the role. And I don't have anything to find in my head.
I was actually going to ask you if you've ever done anything like this before. Something to go off.
Only on a personal level. When I go out, I have taken the opportunity in the past to contact some of the businesses and talk to them, try to set up meetings and spend time talking with the business managers and owners and visit their facilities. I mean, that might even be the easiest introduction, is to call, introduce yourself and say, I'd love to come sit with you and hear more about your business. I think I spent an hour with Fred Murray, who told me all about how Corsh America got started. And I've talked with Michael Boyle, and so that's what I've done. I've just reached out, and then when we have had some of the outreach sessions that we've sent flyers to notify the businesses of those events, I've also gone around, usually no more than a week before and no less than a few days, just because things are, people are more likely to attend and remember things. Mm-hmm. It's a little short term. So whenever we've done that, I've gone out and actually canvassed with the flyers and hand delivered and talked to people. So.
Dottie, you have a lot of professional experience in this arena. you know, we're trying to establish a charge and create a message and formalize it. I would love to hear what you have to say. I have no doubt you've done something, a variation of this before.
Well, I don't know if it would be a specific charge, if that's, you know, because the Economic Development Council has a charge, but I think it would be, you know, what are the goals and what are we trying to accomplish? And I think we could bring.
What's the purpose of this?
Yeah, what's the point and what are we going to do with this information? I think we need to have something to give them. We have a brochure that we did in the past that talks about like some of the things just standard, like the tax rate and you know, maybe some of the, you know, the things that are on the website, even connecting with the Chamber of Commerce, connecting with business resources. For Old Colony Planning Council, we just did a business resource guide, so it's got all kinds of, I can share that with everybody on a separate email, links to how to connect with capital or grants or things like that. So you go in and you're giving them some kind of information up front. So but I think that it's important, if we're going to gather data, that we have almost like a template with what are the consistent questions that we want to ask, so that when we bring it back, we're going to, you know, not have apples and oranges all over the place. Like we asked this guy this question, but this one a different question. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the obvious things I would think would be, you know, what do you need to help you through post-COVID? You know, it would depend. A restaurant's going to give you a different answer than an accounting firm. So we should probably just like try to figure out the top 5 questions that we would want to know.
That might, Dottie, that might even be the best place to start, is how is COVID affecting your business? It's a pretty open-ended question, but that's where you usually get most of your meaningful information anyway. We could collate that and hit on themes. And you're right that it is different. So restaurants, you know, what's the biggest thing facing them? The loss in clientele walking through the door, people coming in to eat. I talked with Ed Walsh the other day, who most of you may know. He runs an HR firm. He places people, and for companies that are looking for employees, the business need is very, very strong, but the number of people available to place, you know, potential employees, is almost non-existent. And I've been hearing this from businesses, all kinds of businesses. You'll hear that from restaurant owners as well, in cases where they're able to operate. So the different types of businesses are being affected differently by COVID. And that would be really useful, I think, for us to know, to see where we might be able to, you know, where the town might be able to help.
So I was just on a call with someone from the Workforce Investment Board and also Massasoit, and they have some training programs specifically to meet with businesses to find out what kind of trainings do you need for your employees. And so by collecting some of those resources and making those connections to businesses, if they, you know, if they're having trouble with workforce because they need a specific kind of workforce, for like John, for manufacturing or things like that, if we could gather that information, and then we could go find some of the resources to make those connections. Or if it's a smaller business or a small minority-owned business or a woman-owned business, there's different organizations that will give you free help, like Small Business Strong or the Center for Women in Enterprise. Or SCORE or SEED. Do they need capital money? There's tons of resources we can connect them with, but we don't want to overwhelm people with resources that they may not need or be interested in.
You know, I'm listening to this, and I think it's great that it's a good idea to limit the questions, because if there's too many questions, people might not want to participate. And I think a COVID question is a really important question, how they're dealing with it. But I also don't want to lose sight that the purpose of this is not just to help the existing business, but to backfill it with new business. So I think there needs to be questions in there as to, you know, where do you see this area or this district years from now, a decade, maybe 2 decades from now, because we're not just trying to develop these areas post-COVID, but really cultivate and carve out the creation of them for decades to come. So, there are immediate questions like, what's the post-COVID world look like to you? And there's long-term questions like, how would this area benefit your business, or what business do you see going in here and existing for 10, 20 years? So small questions and large questions, but we want to keep it to 5. So it's going to be tough to do.
So why don't we send you by email directly questions that we think should be on that questionnaire, and then we can review them at the next meeting and vet out and vote which ones, or you can make.
How about everybody send 5? Yeah, everybody send 5, because some might be a variation of another, and you can combine it and make it one question. I don't particularly want to get 30 questions from each of you. But if you could limit it to 5, I think we'd be able to get this done sooner. And then in our next meeting, we can talk about which 5 we're going to use, pass it off to Stephanie and myself, and start to create this formal, whatever you want to call it, message and questions, and how we actually deliver it to them.
I hope we get the information back to you faster than our bios and pictures.
Yes. I won't say that there's only a couple people that haven't given it to me. I don't want to mention anyone by name, but as soon as I can have all of them, that would be great.
All right, I've checked. I think my bio and picture is up to date. Am I right? Am I one of them?
I don't recall. I looked too. I didn't know. I think that John and Bruce, yours might actually be up there. Is it up there?
I think mine is, yeah.
That's actually really good to know. So do you want them updated, or can we just use what you have up there?
Mine's fine.
Okay,
I think mine's
John?
well.
All right. So we should be good. And
Good thing we're too slow and we never took Stephanie's down.
I do have to replace the one for the town website, though.
Okay. So on that agenda item, are there any questions or comments? Please.
All right, so should we limit the questions about the districts that we're in, as opposed to more broad reaching, how are we going to survive after COVID? Or should we just pick 5 questions you want to ask the business owners in that area?
Well, the 5 questions will have to be applicable to all areas. We're just going to use them in specific areas. So we all have to be asking the same 5 questions, regardless of the area that we're going to be dedicated to. And just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm ruminating here. So Tim, what you're saying is specific to the area, or broad enough that they would be applicable to any one of the districts?
Well, on the agenda item, it talks about, going out into those districts, but then we started talking about, broad reaching, national issues, as far as COVID and things of that nature. Should we focus in on local, maybe improvements they want to see in that district versus, will the stock market rebound type things,
Oh, but that's not, when you look at COVID has a very significant local impact, and that's what we're talking
Of course.
about. Not whether COVID's going away, or any, or is the vaccine on the horizon. Although those play in, all plays in at a very local level.
Tim, I understand what you're saying. That's why I my earlier comment saying that we can't just focus on the post-COVID world, but the actual economic development and cultivation of these areas that will exist 20 years from now. So I do understand. I think, Tim, where you're going is, are we looking to ask questions that will provide short-term solutions to these immediate areas, or larger questions as to the actual development over time of these areas?
And I agree, and I'm gonna say this, but it's gonna sound like I'm contradicting you, and I'm not. We don't want to be short-sighted as we're looking out to the future. With COVID is going to change the world. It will change the long-term way we operate, and some things will go back to normal. Eventually we will all be able to meet in a room again. I feel very confident of that. But if you just look at what was happening to retail even before COVID, and it has been accelerated as a result, you know, the demise of a lot of the brick and mortar retail business. That was already occurring. And so I think the long-term impacts we can't overlook. A lot of restaurants, because it's such a very low profit margin business, as much as everybody loves to go out to eat. I mean, that is one, I would guess that even more than baseball, that going out to eat is America's favorite pastime. That's not going to change. But what else isn't going to change is that running a restaurant is a very low profit business, if you even make a profit. So a lot of restaurants that have closed will never open up again. There will be restaurants that do reopen, but how are they going to reopen? How are they going to reopen so that they're more resilient to a crisis like this? I think those are things that we need to think about as well. We need to plan for the new economic future as opposed to the old.
And there's going to be, so the resiliency of business is incredibly important, because COVID's not going to be the last thing that happens that's going to provide an economic disruption. When we were doing the municipal vulnerability preparedness plan, we were looking at business disruption, municipal disruption, energy disruption from environmental concerns like storms. But we also did have on there illness, like tick-borne illness or triple E or things like that. So, you know, there could be some other kind of a major economic disruption that's not an illness that comes up. So how do you make your business resilient to that? So for instance, the restaurants, that executive order for outdoor dining expires on October 31st.
A big
so
deal.
we should all be thinking about what's going to happen after that.
Yes.
If the governor doesn't extend that, the restaurants that have outdoor dining, that was temporary. If they want to continue that to be permanent, they have to go through the permitting process, and that's not going to be a happy experience for them. So, you know, who knows what the governor's going to do about that? But what are they planning? When everybody went out and started buying tents for their restaurants, there's a huge shortage of tents. You couldn't even get them. So a lot of restaurants had to use umbrellas instead. There's going to be a huge shortage on space heaters, because now restaurants are starting to say, well, we're going to make it permanent, but we need space heaters for outside. You know, plexiglass, things like that. What, you know, how are they going to manage that? But also even offices, you know, most offices, people aren't even planning to have their employees come back to work until well after the 1st of next year. So is there opportunity for those businesses to do something with their excess office space? Like maybe make it, you know, Dan, you'll love this. What about some innovation space? What about entrepreneurs? What about all these people that are working from home that just need a desk outside of their kitchen table? Could they maybe rent some of their cubicles to people that need it? Like stimulate some discussion and ideas about that, because those.
And on that note, Dottie, I love where you're going with this, and I think there's an opportunity for us as a group to have the same conversation about what can the town do. Is there things that the town can do? I know there are certain districts within different cities and towns in the Commonwealth where they're providing public space for private industry to just continue to operate. Are there opportunities within the town where we can help support these businesses that are likely going to shut down, and hopefully not in depth forever, but it's coming. The winter is coming. You know, there's limited amount of space as it is right now, but are there ways that we can utilize public space to help these restaurants and some of these businesses continue to operate and have that kind of conversation internally? Maybe that's something that we're rolling out as a part of this survey. If the town did have some available space, or maybe some of the business partners in the community like the NRT or some of that have some covered space, are there ways that we can cross collaborate and help support these businesses? Because we do have some of the infrastructure in place, the internet and whatnot, to maybe provide the bandwidth to do something. I don't know if there is a something, but maybe that's a conversation that's worth having as well.
Yeah.
I was in Tim's court to begin with, where I felt that we were kind of wandering off what we should be asking about, trying to figure out how to promote and draw businesses into those areas. But really through this discussion, I think that we can bring in all the businesses we want, but if the businesses are there, fold and go under and can't expand, then if we're losing 2 for every 1 we bring in, then that's pointless. So I'm very much now, I guess, seeing the value in really finding out what we can do to support the businesses that are already there.
And we still need to do separate outreach, to new businesses to attract
Right.
them to the area.
Right.
And that's when we're going to be talking about things.
It's a dual effort.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, really twofold.
I think a lot of what we need to think about for the outreach, Dottie, is I think we need to get better at, and it's, I'm of a certain age. I am not as nimble with social media as some of my compadres in the planning world. I strive to be, but constant promotion of what we are doing is one of the best means of advertising. So you're letting people know if whether it's through social media, if we're writing articles for trade magazines about what the town is doing to support businesses and help them. Those are really important tools that, they do take some time, but it gets the message out that Easton is looking to promote their businesses and make it easier. I mean, it's one of the values of the testimonials.
Mhm.
Note on the website, and we talked about this at the last meeting, improving the look and feel of the website. I was going through the industrial park study that was done back in 2013, I think it was 2013 or 14, and one of the things that was repeated throughout, and one of the recommendations was to develop branding for the park and to have a marketing campaign. So those are we can't do all of it at once, but certainly if that's what the direction we're moving in, we just keep building on momentum.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't want to get too far off track. Purpose. What is the purpose? We talked about the charge, the purpose, whatever you want to call it. So the purpose of this is what? I mean, can we start with a couple lines of what is the purpose, just so we can at least establish that, or an idea of that? So by the next meeting, there will be an actual written purpose of this growth district ambassador effort.
I would say the purpose would be to introduce the Economic Development Council to the business, introduce what's the words I'm trying to say, resources to the business, and to discover their business needs for, what could help them now and what could help them for future expansion.
Could I start that by saying, so what we're looking for is to build a relationship that allows us to do all those things for the businesses.
Mm-hmm. Right. And to cultivate growth.
Right. So build a relationship that communicates to the businesses everything Dottie just said. Can you repeat that, Dottie, as I write it down?
Oh God, I don't remember. Can we do the instant
replay? We'll do that after. I'll have Tish get that for me.
I think the purpose is also the message, and what we need is the series of questions. So we can continue on with the meeting. I ask that everybody send me 5 questions that they would like to ask these businesses. Any 5 questions you can think of on any end of the spectrum, and I'll try and pull as many as I can into the next meeting, combine some that are basically the same thing, and we can talk about it then and hopefully refine what those 5 questions are in our next meeting. So does anybody have any last comments on this? No? Okay. So recent and upcoming communications and outreach. As Dottie had mentioned, outdoor dining is coming to an end on October 31st. We have no idea what the governor is going to do. If the governor decides to do nothing, all of that outdoor dining will end, and it will not be the town making that decision. That is a state level decision. So as soon as we're made aware, the town is made aware of what the governor decides to do, obviously that information will be conveyed out to the community very quickly. If anybody is looking for permanent outdoor seating or to convert their temporary space into outdoor seating, into permanent outdoor seating, as Dottie mentioned, there is a process that they would have to go through in order to achieve that. One of the main reasons is the tents that went up, they were approved temporarily. If you have a permanent structure, there's a different approval process. The code is higher, the building code is higher to ensure safety for its patrons. Temporary is only supposed to be temporary. It's not supposed to last a very long time. So if you want to make it permanent, there's a process to go through to make it permanent. So if people are enjoying their outdoor space right now and want to not just continue it through October 31st, but continue it in perpetuity, then I would recommend that they start that process now. I don't see why anyone wouldn't if that's their desire. Dottie, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just say that I think that the outdoor dining that we've had was very successful. I think that a lot of places took advantage of it. I think, I never thought I would see the day when the Union Villa had a beautiful, they did such a beautiful job with their outdoor dining. A lot of the places really did. So I think it was a good partnership with the reopening task force that we had to try to guide businesses to be able to open quickly and not have a lot of stumbling blocks. So I hope that people thought that was a real success. And, I think that people have been very patient as they've gone out to start eating again, as they got used to, these businesses had to create a new business model to accommodate the new normal in their industry. So, I saw things where sometimes it was taking a little bit longer to get their food or things like that. It seemed like they got all the kinks out and people were very patient and supportive and hopefully tipping very well, to show their appreciation to keep the businesses in. I was down the Cape a lot this summer, and the restaurants that I talked to down there, a lot of them are closing earlier than Labor Day because they couldn't get any help down there. So that was definitely an issue, finding help for some of the more seasonal restaurants.
Is this dependency entirely on the governor and the administration to advise towns, or is there anything that we can do kind of proactively? Because I remember being on the planning board, and Stonehill College went through a process to get a permanent tent or a tent structure put up over in the pavilion. And Bruce, that took 6 months, I'm guessing, for you to get that through, when there was fire suppression, fire access, public safety. The process was significant.
Actually, it took about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to answer your question, Dan, I know that Michael Blanchard was sending out a reminder to restaurants about the outdoor dining. He was going to include another piece of useful information in that. I'm going to follow up with him to see if the reminder was to do, that you can do outdoor dining or that it expires. Dottie, is it the end of October? So
October 31st. Yeah.
October 31st. And I mean, what we can do is we can reach out and we can, if his message didn't include letting them know that they should be seeking site plan review for permanent approval, they can do that. It really isn't that complicated. Shoveltown came, they already have their special permit. I mean, there's a filing fee to do it. And we look for engineered plans because you want to make sure it's safe. I mean, there's responding and making, the immediate response to the crisis and making it easier and expediting the process. is important. At the same time, you want to make sure that the setup is safe. And I don't know, I don't know how involved I was with the Stonehill Pavilion. I do recall that being permitted. But I know that McGuire's already have their application in for site plan review, and the
How long does that typically take? Like, how long did that take Shoveltown to acquire?
when I started, they had so they submitted their application, I think the end of July for site plan review, and they already had their amended special permit from the Board of Appeals.
So for them,
It was one meeting. I was on the board, so it's very relatively fast, I would say.
Yeah,
and so now they're approved for permanent outdoor seating.
yeah,
There's
They're
gonna be-
proof of what they
there's
have
gonna
now.
be,
If they want to
public
enclose
comment.
it in or something, it might be an amendment, but for
right. Right, that's one thing we could look at.
I
I'll
think we
talk to the
absolutely should.
I think I'll talk to Greg and to Mike Spillane, because the one thing I do find onerous is that if you get a special permit for example, outdoor dining, or you get a special permit for a dog kennel or some other business, there's no like a minor modification to the special permit. So you're going in, we call it an amendment, but it's the same filing fee. And I really think that we could improve that process. So that's something I've been thinking about, and I'm actually I'll follow up on that.
Okay. Dan, but I think to your question was very specific in that does the governor and his administration have the sole authority to extend the temporary outdoor dining? And I believe the short answer is yes. That does fall. That's from the state.
Because it's a special permit. So
Right.
what he's doing is overriding the special permit process.
Mm-hmm.
Legislation.
I really do wish the governor would make a decision on that soon, because a lot of these restaurants are under an incredible amount of stress. They don't know if their restaurant is going to be basically closed in 6 weeks or not. And I'll be honest, I don't think that's fair. I think you can anticipate 6 weeks out. I really wish you would make a decision sooner than later.
Yeah, no,
I'm not ready to make that decision right now.
Dan, call him.
Yeah. Can you send him an email? So, okay. And then the next two items, Dottie, these were yours. LISC Small Business Grant and Restaurant Survival Tips webinar, and Eat South Shore Summer Passport. If you don't mind talking about those, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So one of the things that I had been thinking is sometimes, so a few of us have some credentials to be able to post to the Economic Development Facebook page. So I had asked to put some of those links on there. I think for small business grants that are coming up, we should post those. I think that for, there was a really good webinar about restaurant survival tips. And when you sign up for those, you can, of course, go back and watch them on a different day. They always have the replay on it. And I think those are really good to have to refer back to for people that are looking for them. And then the Eat South Shore Summer Passport was also, it was almost like a scavenger hunt kind of a thing to go and a promotion that if you went to a certain amount of restaurants, you would be entered in to get a gift card for $25 or something to try to stimulate people going to the restaurants. So it was just and that I had emailed, I think I emailed that to Stephanie. I think that we should capture things like that we may post on social media so that we have these in the minutes. So back at the end of the year, when you have to do the annual report on this year, Mark, you're going to have to look back and try to remember all the little things that we've done. And I think that looking back and seeing some of these, opportunities that we've, even though it's a quick one that goes on social media, these are opportunities that we're bringing to the business community. So I think having it in the agenda in the minutes is important to look back on.
Yeah. And Along those lines, yesterday I received an email. I don't remember if it came through the chamber or not. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you. This is another program that we're going to post out on the website. And for any businesses, restaurant businesses that we have email addresses for, we're going to share this with them. Tish actually went out to the website and get information on how you participate. So hold on a minute. I just want to show this one to you. Okay, can you folks see that?
See it.
Okay, so this is a Let's Make the Last Month of Eat Local, MA Count. It's a program where they're promoting local businesses. It looks like the businesses sign up. And I think what Tish told me was it's through this small business network organization. So if you're a member, but we're going to share that as well, because we certainly have enough restaurants in Easton, and the only one that's listed here, the farm, I think what Tish told me was Langwater is listed here, but none of the restaurants in Easton. So we're going to see if maybe they can get signed up. But those are the type of things that Dottie's talking about. We've shared in the past. And so for example, when it's National Manufacturing Day, I know John does a nice program and has an open house at his facility. We do try to do something on the website just to let people know that week occurs, and to try to let people know that there's manufacturing in Easton. I think a lot of people are surprised, even knowing that we have an industrial park, how much manufacturing occurs. And I think a lot of people are really surprised that it's on Elm Street, you're on, or not Union Street, right, John? In a residential area is this vibrant manufacturing plant. So
there's also a new shop local toolkit that just came out by the State Department of Tourism. So I can send that to everybody as well to take a look at.
So those are the kind of things we'd like to incorporate into the website too, is I think make it the website more inviting for people to go to and come to recognize as a source of information and tools for business growth.
Christina, I know you had spoken with Matt in the past month or so about the website. Can you share with us what you discussed?
Yeah.
Those who don't know, Christina and Matt are going to lead a charge to pour life back into our website.
Right. So yeah, we met recently and kind of went over it, and we're going to merge our notes and then we'll send it out. But I think we actually touched on this a little bit earlier. The biggest thing is we didn't feel that if we were a business going there that we could find resources or it would invite us to give us an idea if we would be successful in Easton or not. So one thing would be is really expanding the resource section. And it's a little wordy. So kind of even I know what we're talking about, and we were reading all the things and it was a little bit confusing, kind of updating it a little bit more. And then maybe adding something like a social media or a blog section that really promotes what we're working on as well, so that businesses can see that how we help them and how we'll be a good resource for them. So that was kind of the big things that we're working on.
That's absolutely fantastic. So it looks like we owe you a lot of information.
Yes, so that's why I'm working on writing it up and making an outline right now so that we can pinpoint one.
If possible, if between now and our next meeting, you could come to the meeting with questions so we can give you answers, so you can actually get going on making those changes. That would be excellent. So yeah, does anybody have any questions for Christina about the website or anything? No?
It sounds like it should be an item for the next agenda.
Absolutely should, which is actually the last item on this agenda, is potential items for the October meeting. I think the continuation of the PACE discussion is going to be on there. Maybe feedback of our meeting, Stephanie,
Yep.
Dottie, and with Connor. So PACE will be on there. The 5 questions for growth district ambassadors, we'll be discussing that. And Christina with your questions as well. And then I think obviously an update on outdoor dining. Hopefully by then the governor will have made a decision.
I've got an update, Mark. With, no bullshit. So it's being extended today to end the state of emergency is the word I just got. So
To
verify
extend
it, being extended. It's being extended today.
Do you have it, does it have a date to which, or is it an indefinite extension?
You said until the state of emergency is lifted, right?
No, but he's saying the state of emergency itself is being extended, which would cover all the outdoor dining. And everything.
So Thursday, executive orders dealing with outdoor dining and arcade reopenings.
Okay, so it is specific.
Yeah, it's specific.
So are you saying
What's that?
it's been extended?
Yep.
Into indefinite?
I'll send it to the group.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yep.
Well, I hope a lot of those restaurant owners.
Good work, EDC.
Yeah, geez. I wish things always move that fast. Well, I hope today or tomorrow or tonight, those restaurant owners can take a breather, that they'll be able to continue that.
Yeah, it'll be signed this afternoon. Awesome.
Awesome. Does anybody have any other things, Dottie, Tim, John, Bruce?
No.
Christine,
I
about
wanted to
the
just ask
agenda
Bruce how the back to school was working out at Stonehill.
Oh, it's actually gone a whole lot smoother than I think a lot of us thought it was going to. You know, we've got everything down for social distancing and everything's labeled and marked, and I don't know, we spent tens and thousands of dollars just on stickers, but it's going good. We've had haven't had a lot of cases really. Everyone's required to test every week, so students, faculty, staff get tested on a weekly basis. Athletes, even though they're not competing, athletes are getting tested twice a week. So and you know, we've had a few cases, but mostly it was the onboarding, people coming back to school. So they're not getting it there. They brought it with them when they came.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we've got quarantine and isolation rooms for students that can't leave or go home, but just very few, really. It's gone good. So right now, we're in session until November 24th. The kids will leave, and they won't be coming back until the end of January. I want to say January 28th. We've canceled spring break to kind of shorten it up. We don't want the students leaving and then coming back.
Mhm.
So, and right now commencement's scheduled for, I think it's the 17th or 18th of next May. We haven't changed the date on that either. But yeah, it's going good. Yeah, it's different. It's different. I mean, we'll get gates on the campus now, and it's you don't see a lot of students walking around. A lot of them are staying in.
Sounds like you guys are a model school on how to handle this.
Boy, I'll tell you, I'm, you know, knock on wood, we got to keep the kids there.
Mm-hmm. Well, important, I would think, to the life of Stonehill. So, okay. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
I just want to be clear for next month's agenda. We had the continuation of the PACE discussion, growth district ambassador questions, website, and then I think the fourth was the outdoor dining, but Dan just answered that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know you answered it, but that was the other.
Yeah, if you want to keep it on temporarily until you see the order sign later today, but that's.
I trust you, Dan.
Nice, I trust you too.
Okay, so
we're keeping the agenda open. We can send any recommendations between now and in the meeting.
Yes.
The days before
Yep.
the meeting.
Yep. Yep. I just, when we know we have items on it, I like to capture it so they don't get forgotten.
Okay. Last item on the agenda. Does anyone want to do it?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Bruce, second. Okay, if you could say your last name and yes, I'll start with Stephanie.
Danielson, yes.
Dottie.
Full Janetti, yes.
Tim.
McCall, yes.
Dan.
Smith, yes.
John.
I
There
was
you go.
muted. Holbrook, yes.
Bruce.
Boyer, yes.
Christina.
Siaglo, yes.
Lamb, yes. Okay, motion to adjourn. We will see you guys at the next meeting, October 8th.
All right, have a good one.
That was good.
Stay
Take
safe.
care.
Yeah.